I'm present here to this amazing human experience. This is an experience for humanity, guys. Hugs over masks represents humanity in all its glory. Hugs is the most essential thing that kids do intuitively. They go and hug each other because that's part of who we are. I'm present here with amazing Yvonne and Cohen. Yvonne is one of the local BC Vancouver chapters leaders here, and Cohen came in a convoy from Winnipeg. Give it up for Winnipeg people! If you ever thought about the heart of this country, you see it on this stage and around yourselves right now. Take a moment, look around yourself. This is the spirit here. These are the light warriors here. We're gonna win this because we've been here before as humanity, as a unit of representing light and love and freedom, and everything is essential. And guess what? We are all essential. Yes or yes? Just to give you a couple more Genesis stories, guys. So Hugs represents humanity in all its glory. Mask is just a symbol. Yes, mask obviously is something that we trying to explain to people and so they understand the real difference behind wearing a mask and not. But it also represents tyranny. It represents oppression. And again, everything that we're doing right now is not even for ourselves. It's for our children and next generations. Because we're going to do anything and everything that's going to take for our next generation to live in a country that's going to be free of oppression and fear. Yes or yes? We started in Toronto on May 2nd. It was my very first protest that I went. And the reason why I'm telling you this, guys, that was my very first protest attending ever in my life. I was not an activist in the form of activist that you see me right now. So guess what? Every one of you can do the same thing. And whoever's watching home right now and you're not here today, that's okay. Tomorrow, go outside and talk to people and wake them up. Every single one person you wake up a day matters so much you have no idea, because the compound effect and the butterfly effect of the influence and the impact that you can create in the local community can be more vast than you can ever imagine. Yes or yes? I want to give quick few moments to represent the leaders in BC right here. Yvonne, we joke around, I call her the employee of the month because she goes on a Saturday rally that we have in Kitsilano Beach and she just talks to people. And it's tremendous when you see people coming in with aggression and fear, and the way we talk to people, we're able to just, wake them up just a little bit, and then they leave with a smile on their face, or maybe even a hug. So I'm just going to give a quick moment to Yvonne. Yeah? Just say how long you've been a part of Hugs and how did you start with us?
I started in August, and I'm so grateful that I found Hugs Over Masks. It's just the most awesome movement, and anybody that wants a hug, come by.
Yes, amazing. Give it up for Yvonne. And this is Keon. Keon is part of our amazing Cohen. Sorry, I keep saying Cohen. Cohen is a part of our Hugs Nation movement, which represents youth leadership program that we're developing right now. Because again, understand, we're not the main target for the people of this agenda. It's the children that's the main target. That's why we're going to be focusing even more going forward, making sure that we have leaders within peer groups and children and teenagers, and they can help other kids wake up and find a light in a room of darkness that's unfortunately is present right now in school and in kindergartens, etc. So I'm going to give a couple moments to Dion. Hi everybody, I'm Cohen. Came all the way from Winnipeg today. Woo! Long ride, I tell ya. This year I joined Hugs Over Masks. I dropped out of school because I'm not wearing a mask all fucking day. and I've been waking up my friends, but they just go back to school and their teachers put them right back to sleep. When you think of school, I question the curricular. School division has to stand for division of the people, because this is exactly what they're doing. Where we go one, we go all. Amazing. This is the future of our country. Yes or yes? So a couple of points of business, so to speak. So we have these exemption flyers. We've been distributing these exemption flyers since June, all across this country. And the whole idea for this is to equip people with a little bit of confidence. Guess what? You don't need anything like that to get you out of the wearing a mask. But if you feel better when you have that, that's okay. We have a great tent set up right there. We have tons of them. Come and pick up as many as you want. To this point, we distributed well over 100,000 of these all across Ontario. We brought about 30,000 to Quebec. And right now, we're almost getting to 100,000 here in BC. And that's why we're going to make a difference in this place. Yes or yes? And it's double-sided. Thank you. The most important thing that I want to tell you guys, if you want to be part of a movement that's really on the ground, boots on the ground, making a difference, Hugs Over the Mask is a place for you. Because we're not just about trying to exempt ourselves from wearing a mask. We're all about educating others so they can do the same. So the second part is the more important is education. It has real data, it has real science with citations, so people can actually educate themselves and wake up. Because from the very beginning, Hugs Over Mask started as the alternative to the mainstream brainwashing fear propaganda. If nothing else, I just want to give people alternative perspective, and then they can choose for themselves. And that's what we represent. And the second pillar of our movement, besides education campaign and truth, is creating local communities. So when we started in May in Toronto with the first chapter, right now we have 20 chapters all across Canada, over 10 chapters in the United States, in Australia and Europe, and we're privileged and grateful to have people coming on board to join us. And the whole idea is locally people coming together in the park setting and just getting to know each other and then making a difference in the local community. And that's how we're gonna win, by waking everybody up, yes or yes? The last thing I'm gonna announce, guys, and this is the first time you hear, we will have Hugs Nation Be the Change Conference on November 12th in Vancouver. Stay tuned for all the updates. If you really want to make a difference in this country, that's the place for you to be. HugsNation.com will be up and running by Monday, and you'll get more details as the days goes on. On this point, I want to mention last thing is you have snap election. Tanya already talked a little bit about it, so I'm just going to make 30 seconds quick. We have 24 independents running in this provincial election. That's amazing. I think this is the first time in the history of this province when you have such an alternative perspective. On the side of the tent there, we have Marcella, we have Sam, we have Tara, and we have Laureline Thompson will be there too to talk to people in terms of alternatives to your election, guys. The election is next Saturday on the 24th. When you're gonna go and vote, give other people an opportunity to represent yourself outside of the mainstream party, because we know party politics, doesn't matter which party it is, represents globalists and corporation agenda. It doesn't represent you. So when you're gonna go and vote for independents or libertarians or Christian Heritage Party. Those are the three main that I would recommend for you. So again, on the right side of the great tent, you'll be able to talk to our independents present here.
It would prohibit me as an independent filmmaker and journalist to share with the people what it is that we all need to know to better guide our lives and our futures. And so what we're up against right now, I'll actually go back and mention that at the beginning, the invention of the printing press is kind of where it all started. This was the point that we were able to, for the first time, to mass produce, to duplicate and distribute information to the people. And this became an instant threat to the church that wanted to dominate the conversation, the religious conversation, and the social conversation. And so since the beginning of that and before, we've had this battle over the control of the global narrative. And as Plato said, those who control the narrative rule society. And so we're dealing with a bunch of power-hungry people right now that are seeking to rule society. And these plans have been in place for decades, as most of you are probably doing your research to understand that this is not a new thing. This pandemic that we've experienced is just the latest expression of the next step in taking away mine and your civil liberties. And they do this through incremental steps. And if we look right now around the world at all of the different immigrants that are speaking out loudly, and I hope all of you are aware of this, that we have people that have come from communist nations all over the world that are speaking out loudly to say, please listen to us, people. Whether you're in America or Canada or wherever you are, please understand that we escaped this communist regime that literally got us exactly the way they're getting you right now. And so there's people out all over the world warning us of this, and I hope that this is the time that we all take the opportunity to listen to them and heed the warning and step up into our own sovereign power and to stop this stuff once and for all. So from the invention of the printing press on down the line, we had several people who then had the money and power to further control and dominate the global narrative. And I'm going to focus my lens here right now on a character named John D. Rockefeller. All of you are familiar with the Rockefeller families, and what they have done to our nation and to our world. But John D. Rockefeller himself was the owner of, at that time, all of the oil in the world, the steel in the world, just about every powerful industry and element that he could monopolize, this man monopolized. And so when it became clear that science had reached a discovery that medicine could be created from petroleum, as the owner of all of the oil in the world, John D. Rockefeller wanted to corner the world of medicine. And so he created a monopoly there, and with some help with some other nefarious souls, like Carnegie, they did their best to corner the market, to invert reality, and to convince all of us that the ancient medicines, the medicines that were grown from the ground, from the earth, the herbal medicines that the Chinese have been using and people have been, healers and shamans have been using for thousands of years, those were the alternative medicines. And anybody that dared practice those medicines were practicing quackery. And he actually had doctors jailed, definitely shamed, kicked out of the different agencies and unions. He took over the AMA, the American Medical Association, to insist that only his curriculum, this new petroleum-based medicine, was taught, and that all doctors, which is one of the reasons that we called the second episode of Pandemic Indoctrination, because it was the indoctrination of all the doctors of that era. And unfortunately, what we're all suffering right now is a result of that move, his greedy move to dominate medicine and to villainize any doctor who dared speak out against these practices. Doctors that knew way back then, I'm talking about the early 1900s, that understood that if we followed these practices, if we continued to do this, then in a matter of time, we would be left in a place that our natural defense systems, our immune systems, this incredibly divine and intelligent system that we were giving from the Creator, from God, from whatever you choose to call it, it was given to us to help us navigate and survive our ever increasingly toxic environment. That the more we damaged that, the more that we took other medicines instead of allowing our natural immune systems to take over, the more we would be dependent upon these synthetic medicines that John D. Rockefeller was creating. And that's the stage we're in right now. So the entire game that is being played right now is a game of dependency. And we have to wake up to this. It is a game of dependency. They want us dependent upon government money. They want us dependent upon medicines such that we can't survive our environment, we can't adapt. And so we need to be lifelong customers of Big Pharma. Now consider for a moment that Big Pharma is the number one lobbyist here in my country, in the United States, the number one lobbyist. Twice the size of Big Oil on Capitol Hill in Washington. They own everything. They own our media. And one side of our political spectrum owns 90 to 95% of all of our media. And so this is one of the most important things that we can wake up to right now. I will say to you, I'll admit to you transparently that having been born in California, I was born into a liberal mindset, and I was told that everything outside of my party was the evil party. Anything to the right, anyone who questioned it was a racist. And what this did is it stopped anyone from really digging into the histories of our political parties to understand what's really going on. And even though there's corruption on both sides, I will say to you, admittedly, that my party, I have woken up in the past few years after having traveled with presidential candidates, Democratic presidential candidates on the road, Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, and having met a lot of the different players, the Democratic players that were running for president this last cycle, that I've woken up and I've seen behind the curtain. I've seen the frightened man at the controls of the voice of the great Oz to realize that we have all been bamboozled. And our politicians have been set up for generations, for decades, placed, selected, not elected, but selected to do a very particular job. And that job is now unfolding. This is not a happenstance thing. This is not a sudden thing. This didn't arise suddenly just because we have an outbreak of a virus. The reason we called my project Plandemic is because this has been planned. This has been planned for decades. It is written in manifestos to the T, literally describing exactly what's taking place right now that we're all enduring. It was planned and written since way before, but the ones that I'm aware of that I've read started in the 50s and 60s and beyond. And so it's very important that we understand that there are an elite force of people who seek to rob us of our freedom to explore this incredible planet, to adventure this planet, to be together. And right now, not only our civil liberties are being taken away, but our most precious liberties are being taken away. Our ability to be with each other, our ability to communicate with whoever we want to communicate, our ability to say whatever we choose to say, when we choose to say it, our ability to express ourselves. These are the most precious things that we should be here to protect. But above all, the most precious thing that we're here to protect, and I want to talk to you about today, is this thing we call our attention. Now, we all use the word attention, but in the words of, I've been studying the work of Joseph Campbell for many decades at this point, the man who dedicated his entire life to understanding the human mythologies, the stories we've been telling each other since the beginning of humanity. And within every one of Joseph Campbell's stories, he talks about a holy grail, something that the hero is out to get, something that is so valuable that it has the ability to shape our world. And I'd like to present the idea that the Holy Grail is your attention. What they're trying to capture is your attention. Every billboard, every message that comes at you, every political pandering that is being done right now is to capture your attention. Now, your attention is the rudder, is the wheel that guides the rudder of your ship. And if that is off by a human hair, you end up on an entirely different continent than you were meant to be, that you were born to be. And so the most important thing we can do right now as a global family of humans, as cells in the organism of humanity, is to protect this thing we call our attention. And so one of the ways for us to do that, because if we don't, we end up with a lot of confused ideas, and we end up with a lot of an idea of a misguided idea of why and who we are, what and who we are. And so when you understand, having spent myself many years in boardrooms with ad agencies and understanding the depth of the psychological manipulation that goes into selling a single product, it requires them to first convince us that we need the product. So if you need something, you're lacking something. So we have been systematically convinced that we're lacking. And the truth of the matter is, and I really want this to hit your heart and your mind, we're lacking nothing. The only thing that we could be lacking right now is access to truth, because the truth is what shall set us free. The truth of the matter is we were born with everything we need. You were born with everything you need. We don't need a leader to guide us. It is time to stop looking at gurus, looking at politicians to save us, to understand the message that is literally at the core of every iconic movie and story that we've ever loved and that we will continue to love, the ones that have stood the test of time. And that is, you are the one. We are the one. The force is within us. The force is within you. This is the story they're keeping from us. This is our story. It's your story. And we get to, from this point on, author the next amazing crescendo chapter of our lives. We take the pen out of the bastard's hands and we write our stories together as the collective heroes of our own future here on this incredible planet that we came here to explore together. And never again shall we let these incredibly wicked people run our lives and tell us who we are and who we may associate with.
No way.
Take off the mask, hug each other, turn to the people with you right now, give each other a hug, look in the eyes, remember who and what we are right now. Give a good look into the windows of the soul. Just remember that right now. We are humans, and we are extraordinary. And when we work in concert with our planet, our nature, our gods, we can accomplish anything. God bless you all.
Freedom! What is freedom? Freedom, people think, is something that we must demand, something we must say we must be given, when in fact, freedom is who we are. It's what we are. It's what we've always been. And when people say we must take our freedom back, no. We must simply stop giving it away. Because that's what we've been doing throughout human history, and that is why the few throughout that same history have always controlled the many. Because the many give the power to authority that recycle it back, at which point the many think the authority has power over them, when that power is simply that which the many have given to the few. And it looks a challenging task, and it is, when we face what is happening around the world. A challenging task in that, what do we do? Well, the what we will do, or must do, to turn this around is very simple. We must invoke the power of no. The power of ceasing to obey authority when the reason for those impositions is nothing more than mass enslavement. So, what we do, simple. What's not simple is getting people to do it. And I want to address that a little later. But for now, welcome, greetings from England's green and pleasant land. My home here on the Isle of Wight, just off the south coast of England. England's green and pleasant land. Well, it's still green, but it's not so pleasant since the pandemic hoax was played in 2020. Just as in Canada, just as in the United States, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and across the world, in England, fascism is sweeping across this land. And once again, fascism is made possible not by the fascists,
Us.
but by the population's acquiescence to the fascists.
Yes or yes?
And in 2020, we have seen that in crystal clarity all over the world. billions meekly going under house arrest, many most willingly at the start, because an authority told them that they should and they must. Because, of course, why would authority, governments, lie to us? Why would they do that? What's in it for them? Well, let's start at the beginning in answering that question. I moved here to the beautiful Isle of Wight, where I fell in love with this place when I was a little kid, coming on bucket and spade holidays from Leicester in the English Midlands. And from the time I moved here, in the early 1980s, my life began to change. Slowly at first, and then quicker and quicker and quicker. Until from 1990, my life was transformed in a series of extraordinary experiences. And as a result of them, as the 90s unfolded, I found myself walking into personal experience, people, whistleblowers, documents, books, information from all different sources. And as I started to travel the world, those sources increased. And what that information was putting before me is that this world is controlled by a web of secret societies, semi-secret groups, which together interact to drive a global agenda for the total subjugation and submission and control of the entire human family. And I can tell you, when I started talking about this and revealing this from the early 1990s onwards, some 30 years now ago, there weren't many that wanted to know. And on that subject, I will never forget what Canada gave to me, and in particular, what Vancouver gave to me, that helped me continue to press on, despite all the outward evidence that, what's the point? I went to the United States in 1996 to speak about these subjects for the first time. Oh, the crowds came. The crowds were so big that if we held the event in a phone booth, there'd have been plenty of room. This guy was crazy. I spoke in Chicago to 8 people. I did an extended version in Chicago the next night, and 4 people turned up. So the first night went down well. And it was like that. For 3 months, I traveled across America, talking to nobody, saying this is coming, and if we don't wake up, we're going to regret it. And then there was one guy, a lovely man in Vancouver called Joseph Duggan. And he had organized a talk in Vancouver on this trip. A trip where, in most of the events, it would have been cheaper for me to get the telephone number of the audience and call them individually. But Joseph Duggan organized this event in Vancouver. And I turned up at the airport to meet him, and my spirit was beginning to doubt the point of my existence. But that night, 250 people turned up in a hotel room, conference room in Vancouver. And that was the drive, the encouragement that I needed to keep going. So I'll never forget that night in Vancouver, because it drove me on. And the next year there were 350, the next year there was 750 in Vancouver, and then of course the usual suspects started trying to close me down, and it was an effort to get anywhere in Canada where I was allowed to speak. Confirmation that what I was saying had validity. And as these years and decades have passed, more and more world events have shown that there is indeed a global conspiracy that has a horrific agenda for humanity, and fundamental to that agenda, without which it could not happen, is to hijack the perceptions of the population. This is why they target information. This is why they want to control information, because to control information is to, in most people, dictate perception, which is dictate behavior, which is to dictate society. And what we are seeing, indeed have seen all the way through these decades, is the incessant, merciless targeting of human perception in the schools, through the media, through all these different sources. And in 2020, the outcome of that has been clear to see. Billions of people went under house arrest, and it's planned to follow again, because they perceived that what they were told about a deadly virus was true. No question, no personal research. Government says it's got to be true. Governments don't lie. Even though people say all the time, governments lie to you. When they tell you there's a deadly virus, oh no, they're not lying. And then there was another group of people who could see actually it didn't add up. It didn't make sense. It was contradictory. But they still went under house arrest because they feared the consequences of not doing so. And those two perceptions, fear of the virus, fear of authority, got billions of people under house arrest around the world. And that leaves another group, the group before us today in Canada, that says, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't add up, there's something wrong here. I can see this is about control, not health. And so, I ain't doing it. I will not comply with my own enslavement. People who have the self-respect which has broken every tyranny in history, because self-respect will not allow itself to be imposed upon, to be enslaved on someone else's say-so. And thus it is self-respect that invokes the power of no. I'm not doing it. And if we don't do it, they can't do it. And our challenge is to increase and increase and increase the size of that group, and it is happening. It's happening around the world, and people from within the institutions, lawyers and medical people and scientists are now starting to break ranks to increase this group of people who can both see it and won't have it. And I just want to make one point to focus on, because from it, in all directions, comes both the agenda and the way out, and that is masks. First of all, the mask has nothing to do with health. Viral particles, minuscule, only seen under electron microscope. Holes in mask, much bigger. I think I see the problem. But there are others too, like not breathing enough oxygen into the body, like breathing in carbon dioxide, which your body's trying to expel, breathing in fibers, tiny microscopic fibers that detach from the mask, and as you breathe in more deeply, because you're trying to get more oxygen in to compensate, you're breathing those fibers into the lungs. I got banned from Twitter for 7 days for posting directly to a scientific study saying that about fibers. They don't want us to know this. Of course they don't. Then you see the face of children who are now starting to get bacterial infections on their face because of the buildup of bacteria and mold in the masks. But they are the extremely important physical consequences of the masks. The real reason, that's one of the reasons. But the key reason is psychological. The target of this global cult, as I call it, is the human subconscious mind. Because if they can put programs of perception into the subconscious mind, they feed through to the conscious mind, at which point the person thinks they're having their own thoughts, their own opinions, their own conclusions, when they're just repeating subconsciously induced programs. And so the target is the subconscious mind, and the language of the subconscious mind is symbolism. This is why this cult has this whole language of symbolism. The pyramid, an all-seeing eye, the lighted torch held by the Statue of Liberty. These are all obvious symbols of this cult, but the language is very detailed. Why? Because symbolism is the language of the subconscious. This is why we dream symbolically, overwhelmingly, and very rarely literally. And the mask is a massive subconscious symbol. That's why they're being imposed upon people all over the world. And incrementally, more and more situations for longer and longer time that people are being told they must have a mask on or else. And it's about rewiring human behavior via the subconscious. What is the symbolism of covering the mouth? It's silence, being silenced, being faceless, losing your individuality, being dehumanized. This is what the mask is all about. Not least deleting individuality and a sense of the unique sovereign self. Or you pass people in the street and you know them, but you've got a mask on, they've got a mask on, you pass, you don't even know them, as you normally would. And that is why I have never put a face diaper on. I never will, and I'll go to frickin' prison first. Because you can enslave my body, you cannot enslave my mind. And that's what this is about, enslaving the mind. And not only creating health consequences, not least respiratory, which you can then call COVID-19, but also changing the nature of human psychology and the human psyche. Between 1996, when I first started investigating mind control, right into across the new millennium and beyond, I met so many people who were victims or survivors, better word, of the infamous MK-Ultra mind control operation run by the American government, the American military and the CIA, and an elite offshoot of it called Project Monarch. And I was contacted just 3 weeks ago by someone who was a survivor of Project Monarch MK-Ultra, called Kathy O'Brien, who I met for the first time in 1996. And she said, just want to make this point about the masks. She says, my daughter Kelly, who I've also met, was born while she was, Kathy was held by MK-Ultra. She was born into the mind control operation. And Kathy said, what they forced my daughter Kelly to do from the age of 2 was wear a mask. Why? Because it was deleting her sense of individuality, so making mind control easier. And this is the crucial bit too. It was reducing the amount of oxygen being absorbed by the brain, thus making mind control and the rewiring of perception far easier. And here we are in 2020 with kids in school and with adults across the world being told they have to wear masks for a longer and longer and longer period because of exactly the same reason. To dismantle them physically, COVID-19, and to dismantle them psychologically. So, symbols are very powerful. That's why they use them, otherwise they wouldn't. But they're a two-edged sword, people. Yes, a mask is a symbol of submission, of silencing, of dehumanization when you put it on your face. But when you take it off and chuck it in the bin, it becomes a symbol of freedom! Freedom! Take your bloody mask off! People of the world, express your freedom! Because if we don't, then where this agenda is supposed to lead, we'll go on leading there. But we have the power. We have the power to stop it. And we need to grasp it. And it is simple. the power of no. Because right across the world, these governments, these government leaders, these dark suit medical technocrats that are driving this policy of human control are all being centrally guided and dictated to by this global cult, not least via gophers of the cult like Bill Gates. And we can submit to that and have our children and grandchildren live their entire bloody lives in a scale of fascism that would make Orwell wince. Or we can take our uniqueness and the power that we possess, and we can stop giving it away. And we can stop being divided by irrelevant fault lines of race and religion and sexuality. We're all one consciousness, having a brief experience called human. The labels are illusions, they're just experiences. We are the consciousness, all one consciousness, having those experiences. So let's put the fault lines down that divide and rule us and allow the few to control the many. Put aside the petty squabbles, the egos at 10 paces, and come together as one unique humanity, one human family of all different creeds, colours, backgrounds, races, sexualities, it matters not. Because the gun sights are on all of us. When we come together, it's over. We stay divided, it goes on as before. We are the power. Let's stop giving it away. Let's come together across the thousands of miles between here and Canada, and here in Australia, and here in New Zealand, and all over the world. Because when we do, the game is over. Thank you, Canada. Thank you very much. Freedom!
Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom!
Let the world hear you guys. Come on, keep it going.
Freedom! 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 Freedom!